Marblehead, Massachusetts, where she taught 5th grade at Glover School. She lived alone in a small house on Sioux Street and was described as a quiet and kind individual who was well liked by her students and colleagues. That is, until her untimely death in the fall of 1950. 2 days after Thanksgiving, on Saturday, November 25, 1950, Burl was at home with her white Spitz dog, Easy, calling around to different colleagues to make dinner plans. However, a severe nor'easter was battering the Massachusetts coast, a storm locals dubbed the Little Hurricane, and most people didn't want to go out. Late that afternoon, she decided to drive the 4 miles to nearby Salem to retrieve her fur coat from the cleaners, and she was seen wearing it later that day. She then visited her safe deposit box at Nomig Trust and afterward went to the grocery store, where she bought chicken, pork, and a Boston Herald Traveler. She returned home and was spotted around 6 p.m. by her paperboy, who saw her putting something in the trash can outside her house. By then, the storm's winds had reached 60 to 70 miles per hour, and heavy rain was falling on the city. Back inside, she removed her dress, draped it over the banister, and went to the kitchen wearing her pink sweater, white slip, and brown shoes. She began cutting up some of the meat to feed Easy. At that point, it's believed an unknown individual broke through a side door on her porch, as the door latch was later found on the kitchen floor, and began attacking her. The attacker kicked Easy out of the kitchen and then sadly strangled Burl to death. They then took a small knife and slashed her throat in a crisscross pattern. After she was dead, the killer took a bone-handled bread knife from a drawer in the kitchen, broke the blade into 5 pieces, and scattered them around her body. The handle was returned to the drawer. It's believed the killer did this to mislead investigators, and it worked. For years, the bread knife was thought to be the murder weapon until forensic testing later proved otherwise. As for the actual murder weapon, confusion has surrounded the case for decades. Many articles claim that 2 knives were found at the scene, the broken bread knife and a second knife in the same drawer. Both were eventually ruled out as too dull to have caused the wounds on her throat, indicating the killer likely brought their own weapon and then removed it. This makes sense. If someone went to such lengths to clean up the crime scene afterward, they would not leave behind the most obvious clue. After Burl was dead, the killer went upstairs, possibly searching for something of value. It's worth noting that Easy was later found alive, hiding in an upstairs closet. Though rarely mentioned, it's possible the killer even entered her bedroom looking for the dog. Investigators know for certain the killer was in that room because blood was found on a pillowcase on Burl's bed. It's theorized that the killer then left and returned with help to clean up the blood in the kitchen. This is likely why investigators never found any fingerprints or shoe prints. 2 days after the murder, on Monday morning, November 27, 1950, at around 8 a.m., the neighborhood milkman, Kenneth Phillips, arrived at Burl's house to make his routine delivery of her quart of milk. Finding the house strangely quiet, with no sign of Easy or Burl, he opened the back door to place the milk in the refrigerator, and discovered her body. Panicked, he ran across the street to the Chapman's home and had them call the police. Around the time of her death, Burl had gone on a few dates with a local man who quickly became a suspect. But with no physical evidence tying him to the crime, he was never charged, nor was anyone else. Unfortunately, in 1950, evidence collection lacked the precision of modern standards. Combined with the stormy weather, it's likely crucial evidence was missed. In recent years, 2 local authors, Harry Christensen and Rich Santasanio, published a book called Murder in Marblehead, Who Killed Burl Athetherton, which re-examines the case and discusses 3 possible suspects, though their names have never been released. It has now been over 75 years since Burl Athetherton was brutally murdered, and as of December 2025, the case remains unsolved. Brienne alias Breezy, Pennington. Brienne Elise Pennington, known as Breezy, was born in Tacoma, Washington, on October 27, 1992. She grew up in Riverside, California, where she was raised by her aunt and uncle, Jim and Brenda Hull, who eventually adopted Brienne and her brother. After graduating from Riverside High School, she attended Riverside Community College. Growing up, Brienne loved horses and became an accomplished rider. Later, as an adult, she raised exotic chickens. She was also active in her local congregation of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Gardner, Massachusetts. By the age of 30, Brienne lived in Gardner with her husband Aaron and their 4 children. Sadly, while Brienne was a supportive wife and dedicated mother, Aaron was allegedly the opposite. He had struggled with a mental health disorder for years. Some claimed he was even faking it to avoid military responsibilities. He frequently threatened suicide but refused to seek help. When Brienne finally got him to see a therapist, he never took it seriously nor followed their recommendations. Brienne continued trying to manage his medication and ensure he attended appointments, sometimes even speaking on his behalf. Eventually, Brienne had enough and began making plans to move with the children to Texas to get away from Aaron. In response, he once again threatened to take his own life. Then, on Sunday, October 22, 2023, everything took a tragic turn. Around 9 a.m., the couple's 4 children, who had been preparing for church, went to a neighbor's house saying they couldn't find their father and that their mother was crying in the bedroom and unreachable. The neighbor called 911 and contacted members of Brienne's church. When the bedroom was checked, the door was found blocked by a dresser and had to be forced open. While official reports say police officers made entry, Brienne's aunt later claimed it was actually members of the Latter-day Saints church who pushed through the blocked door. Regardless, once inside, Brienne was found shot to death in her bed. Aaron was missing, along with his vehicle. Surveillance footage revealed he left the house shortly before 9 a.m., not long after the murder. Because the door was barricaded, he had to escape out the second-story bedroom window. Investigators also learned from spent shell casings that the murder weapon was a Walther pistol given to Brienne by her grandfather. That weapon was never found. Brienne's aunt told police that Aaron had spent the previous day frantically searching the house for something, now believed to be the gun he ultimately used. The day before the murder, Aaron returned from visiting his parents in California, where he borrowed an undisclosed sum of cash from his father. He also told a friend on his way home from the airport that he was 10 steps ahead of everyone. The morning after the murder, around 5 a.m., a hunter found Aaron's BMW abandoned about 1,500 yards into the woods at Camp Collier, a Boy Scouts campground about 3 miles from the Pennington home. Again, there was no sign of Aaron. Investigators then obtained a search warrant for his phone records and found a disturbing note typed the night before. "Don't say anything. Be quiet. If she wakes up, just say you're getting a nasal spray. Get on the side of the bed, very close proximity to the head. Put a hole in her head." Police and multiple agencies spent several days searching the woods around Camp Collier in Gardner and nearby Ashburnham. Despite K-9 units and aviation support, Aaron was never found. Before the murder, he had spoken about living off the grid, leading many to think he might be doing exactly that, if he is still alive. Online speculation suggests he may have received help, though this has not been confirmed. The couple's 4 children have been cared for by relatives since the incident. Aaron was 33 at the time and is now in his mid-30s, standing 6 feet 2 inches with blue eyes and natural blonde hair. If you have any information regarding the whereabouts of Aaron Pennington, please call the Massachusetts State Police at 508-832-9124. Brienne was murdered on October 22, 2023, and as of December 2025, her killer has never been brought to justice. Henry Bedard Jr. Henry Bedard Jr. was born in Salem, Massachusetts, on June 25, 1959. At age 15, he lived in Swampscott, Massachusetts, and was a sophomore at Swampscott High School. Despite standing only 5 feet 4 inches and weighing 135 pounds, he earned a spot on the junior varsity football team. Friends and family described him as a happy, good-humored individual. Outside of school, Henry was well known at his father's service station on High Street in Danvers, Massachusetts, where he worked pumping gas. He also worked as a caddy at a golf course and had saved $900, which he planned to use to buy his first car. On the morning of December 16, 1974, Henry left home and walked his younger brother to the junior high. He then walked another 2 miles to Swampscott High School and attended all his classes. School let out early that day at 2:15 p.m., and Henry took a bus to Vineland Square, unusual for him, as he typically walked home with friends. Once there, he dropped off a roll of 8mm film at CVS and bought perfume for his sister for Christmas. After leaving the store around 3 p.m., he crossed into the Department of Public Works lot, wished the workers a Merry Christmas, and showed them the CVS bag, saying he was going home to wrap presents. He then headed toward the back of the lot, where the woods began. When Henry wasn't home by 5:30, his family began to worry. By 7 p.m., his father, Henry Sr., picked up Henry's friend Paul Suguro and drove around in the heavy rain, searching parks, woods, and back paths, calling for Henry. They assumed he had fallen and was injured, but the truth was far worse. The next day, Swampscott police arranged for a helicopter to assist in the search. During school, a 10-year-old boy named Cliff Goodman heard from a friend about an empty wallet and a perfume bottle sitting on a ledge near the Swampscott Public Works yard. After school, Cliff and his friend walked a trail behind the houses on Norfolk Avenue or off Suffolk Avenue behind the Department of Public Works building. They arrived around 2:30 p.m., scanning the leaves for the perfume and wallet, when they made a horrifying discovery. Covered in leaves and blood was the body of Henry, dead from a blow to the head. The spot was known locally as Swampscott View and overlooked the Public Works yard and Paradise Road. It was considered a teen hangout and not a path Henry typically took. His autopsy revealed he had been struck at least 5 times with a blunt object. A baseball bat found nearby was determined to be the murder weapon, a Louisville Slugger Hank Aaron model with unusual carvings on the knob resembling either Roman numeral 6 or the letter K. Despite reaching out to many Little League officials, police could not identify the bat's owner. Forensic tests confirmed the bat was stained with human blood, but DNA testing did not exist at the time, and neither the state police nor the FBI could determine a blood type or identity. 2 partial fingerprints were lifted from the bat, but since Henry was never fingerprinted during the autopsy, investigators couldn't determine whether the prints belonged to him or the killer. Tragically, after Henry's death, his parents divorced and moved away. Over the years, Henry's clothing and the bat were sent out repeatedly for updated forensic testing, but no leads developed. In 2025, investigators exhumed Henry's body, hoping he might have the killer's DNA under his fingernails. If you have information about the murder of Henry Bedard, call the Unresolved Case Unit tip line at 1-855-MA-SOLVE or 1-855-627-6583. Henry was found murdered on December 17, 1974, and as of December 2025, the case remains unsolved. Sabrina Lee Hathaway. Sabrina Lee Hathaway was born on August 17, 1991. Her father tragically died in a fire at age 21, and her mother became involved with drugs, prostitution, and criminal associates. Because of this, Sabrina and her 3 sisters were taken by child welfare authorities. While Sabrina was sent to live with relatives, her 3 sisters were placed into adoption. By age 7, Sabrina was being sexually abused by a convicted sex offender. By 15, she became pregnant by a classmate, and by 19, she had given birth to a second child. Both children were left in the care of family members. Like her mother, Sabrina entered a series of abusive relationships, and by age 23, she was living in Worcester, Massachusetts, diagnosed with bipolar disorder and receiving disability benefits. In December 2014, Sabrina vanished under mysterious circumstances. In the early hours of December 20, Sabrina left her aunt's home, saying she was going for a ride with a friend and would be right back. She never returned. The friend was her ex-boyfriend, Kevin Crower, though her family did not know that at the time. After she left the house, her phone was turned off and has never been recovered. She and Crower had been in a volatile relationship and broke up a week before her disappearance. Though she moved out of the home they shared, owned by Crower's grandmother, they continued spending time together. When questioned, Crower claimed that after picking Sabrina up, they went to a party at a friend's house, drank, and were later driven home by a friend. He said that after arriving home, they went to bed, and when he woke up, she was gone. Less than 2 weeks after Sabrina vanished, on New Year's Day 2015, authorities were called to Crower's home due to a fire. Investigators determined it was arson, and Crower was the likely culprit. They learned that he had offered $1,000 to 2 men, Scott Phelan and Lionel Bermudez, to help burn the house down. The men later told police that Crower wanted insurance money, though the home wasn't insured. On the day of the fire, the 3 reportedly used cocaine, filled a can with gasoline, and poured it throughout the house. When it ignited, an explosion blasted Bermudez out of the home and set his pants on fire. Crower initially claimed he spent New Year's Eve at a friend's apartment, but those friends contradicted his story. Crower was arrested and charged with arson. Investigators believe he set the fire to destroy evidence related to Sabrina's disappearance. 2 weeks after the fire, police searched the house and seized drain traps, sink traps, pieces of a stained mattress, and paperwork belonging to Sabrina. No evidence of remains was found, but burn patterns showed that accelerant had been poured around the master bedroom bed. In April 2017, Sabrina's mother, Brenda, learned the house was set to be torn down. Believing it might still contain evidence, she was devastated. Brenda had previously worked hard to get sober, but the loss of her daughter caused her to relapse. On April 30, she died from a combination of heroin use and a violent altercation with her boyfriend. On May 25, 2018, Crower was convicted of arson and sentenced to 6 years in prison. Because the case took so long to prosecute, he had already served 3 years and was paroled in April 2020. Crower had a long criminal history. In 2006, at age 19, he robbed and beat 2 elderly men, serving 3 to 5 years in prison. In 2012, he returned to court for intimidating a witness and assault and battery. His former girlfriend took a restraining order out against him, writing, "He had a violent past, and I'm afraid for my safety." Today, little information has been released about the ongoing investigation into Sabrina's disappearance. Many people who might know what happened are missing, incarcerated, or dead. A year after Crower's release, in April 2021, he and another man were shot on John Street in Worcester by 25-year-old Troy Marvin. Crower was taken to the hospital, but no updates were provided. If you have any information regarding the disappearance and presumed murder of Sabrina Hathaway, please call Worcester Police at 508-799-8600. Sabrina stood 5 feet 2 inches tall and weighed about 110 pounds. She went missing on December 21, 2014, and as of December 2025, she remains missing and her case unsolved. Simone Stephanie Ridinger. Simone Stephanie Ridinger was born on January 5, 1960. After her father died when she was very young, her mother, Jane, moved them to New York. There, they met their neighbor, John Ridinger, a widower with a daughter named Betsy. Jane and John eventually married, and John adopted Simone. The newly blended family later moved to Sherborn, Massachusetts. Simone was a creative person who enjoyed playing multiple instruments and singing. School, however, was difficult for her, leading some to believe she was simply being a rebellious teenager. She eventually dropped out to pursue her GED. By age 17 in early 1977, Simone left home. Jane and John had divorced by then, and Simone moved into her own apartment on Lehnan Street in Framingham, Massachusetts. She continued pursuing music and was known as an independent, free-spirited young woman. She found work waitressing at the Rainbow Restaurant in Natick, Massachusetts. After her shift ended on Friday, September 2, 1977, the start of Labor Day weekend, she told her coworkers she planned to hitchhike to Cape Cod. Hitchhiking was still common at the time, and she had done it often. Her plan was to take a ferry to Martha's Vineyard and meet her mother at a cottage on Chappaquiddick Island. Sadly, she never arrived. Because several highly publicized hitchhiker murders had occurred earlier in the decade, her coworkers and her sister Betsy were particularly worried. Most of Simone's previous rides were short trips home from work, but hitchhiking to Cape Cod was much farther. Betsy even offered to drive her to the bus stop, but Simone declined, insisting hitchhiking was the best option. After clocking out around 3 o'clock or 4 p.m., she changed into blue jeans, a white t-shirt, and white high-top sneakers. As soon as she left the restaurant, she began looking for a ride, and then disappeared. No one saw what vehicle she entered. At first, her family assumed she had been delayed or changed her plans. When they returned home 9 days later and realized Simone had not returned, panic set in. They contacted everyone they could think of, but no one had seen her. Jane reported her missing. Police initially dismissed her disappearance as a runaway case and didn't take it seriously, believing she would return on her own. She never did. They questioned her co-workers, but developed no leads. On September 17, they visited the Burka House of Correction to speak with Simone's boyfriend. He said she had stopped writing and failed to visit him that day, highly unusual, especially since she had special permission to see him. A full investigation wasn't opened until October 4, more than a month after she vanished. For many years, the last confirmed sighting of Simone was at the restaurant. But in 1986, a witness came forward claiming he had given Simone a ride early in the morning of September 3. The man, now deceased, said he was traveling to Cape Cod to buy clock parts and was stopped for a violation at a rest area at Route 128 and Route 109 in Westwood, Massachusetts. A state trooper had Simone in the back seat of his car, and when they learned both were headed toward the Cape, the officer asked if the man would take her the rest of the way. He agreed and later dropped Simone off at the Hyannis Airport Rotary, watching as she walked toward a nearby restaurant. Investigators found the man credible because he accurately described her appearance, clothing, and belongings, including a gray duffel bag, details not publicly released until 2017. In 2016, several of Simone's co-workers were interviewed for the first time. One woman said Simone had changed out of her waitress uniform and placed it into a small gray army-style duffel bag, details that strongly matched the witness's account. In 2025, retired State Police Detective Lieutenant Rick Nagel read an article about Simone's case and immediately thought of Eric H. Anderson Jr., a convicted killer from southeastern Massachusetts with a history of violent assaults against women. Rick had helped investigate the murder of Ruth Masters, for which Anderson was eventually convicted. Confident in his theory, Rick brought it to police in Sherborne. Investigators learned that Anderson had been in the area at the time. Released on parole in 1974, he resumed targeting women near Cape Cod. On May 14, 1977, 6 months before Simone disappeared, he murdered Ruth Masters in the Miles Standish State Forest, about 30 minutes from where Simone was last confirmed seen. Then in October 1977, a month after Simone's disappearance, he attacked a female hitchhiker near the Sagamore Bridge, bound her hands, and threatened to kill her. She escaped. This location was only about 20 minutes from the airport Rotary. Anderson was indicted for Ruth's murder in 1998 and found guilty in 2003, receiving life without parole. He was considered a suspect in the disappearance of Judith Bleer, who vanished 2 weeks after Simone. Anderson died in prison in 2016 and was never charged in connection with any missing person case. Police have Simone's DNA on file and have compared it with unidentified Jane Doe cases, but no matches have ever been found. If you have information about the disappearance of Simone Ridinger, please call the FBI's VCAP line at 1-800-634-4447 or the Sherborne Police Department at 508-653-2424. Simone disappeared on September 2, 1977, and as of December 2025, she remains missing and the case unsolved.